Howdy everyone and welcome back to Tucson, Arizona. I'm Travis and I'm alive here in Tucson. I just want to make a video about some of the things that people say about Arizona that just downright irritate me. I've lived here for 2 years. I have spent a lot of time in Phoenix, Flagstaff, Sedona, and I worked at Lake Powell for an entire summer where we traveled kind of the northern part of the state, spent a lot of time in Monument Valley. So I've been all over the state, and these are just some of the things that people say that just kind of really grind my gears. These are people that either have lived here, haven't lived here, or they're just ex-Arizonans or other YouTubers. So we'll get into that really quickly. Basically, in a nutshell, the one thing that just irritates me the most is when people just say it's always hot, like as if it's hot just 24/7, which is not true. And one of my favorite YouTubers to watch and listen to is World According to Briggs. Now, him and other people, they have their opinions. He prefers the Pacific Northwest. He lives in Oregon, but there's a lot of people just like, oh, it's just always hot in Arizona. Well,
Arizona is always hot, and
well, you know what? Yeah, maybe you're in Phoenix or Yuma or Tucson, but it's not hot all the time. In fact, right now, up on Summer Haven, which is on Mount Lemmon, just here in Tucson, it's like consistently in the low 70s every single day now that we're in September, which is awesome. And of course, you have Flagstaff, which has 4 seasons and is really pleasant temperature. Even in the summer, obviously, there can be hot days, even during July. But you also have like Show Low and Prescott. Like there's all kinds of places that are just, you know, not that hot or are actually really cold. I mean, obviously around the Flagstaff you have the Arizona Snow Bowl, and Mount Lemmon, the southernmost ski resort. So you obviously have to get snow there in order. It has to be cold to get the snow. So it's not hot all the time. So that really gets on my nerves. The other thing that gets on my nerves is when people act like the entire state is Phoenix. Now I understand. Phoenix is the largest metropolitan area. It's where most of the jobs are. It is where most people will move if they're coming to Arizona. That's just a fact. It'll be Phoenix or Tucson, and a lot of the other cities, they're just not as big or not as moved to, probably due to jobs or something like that. So when people have complaints or say things about the state, it's like they're kind of always talking about Phoenix. So when it comes to traffic complaints, Phoenix. When it comes to heat complaints, Phoenix. When it comes to other complaints, it feels like it's like, look, the whole state isn't Phoenix. Now, what I'm going to go over real quick is just a snapshot of what I've seen a lot of people say and do. So I'm going to pull that up. I saw this reel on Instagram that I've seen a lot of other people do, so this isn't something that is me picking on this one particular person, but I've seen other Instagram reels about somebody that lived in Arizona and then they moved away, and what they say kind of gets under my skin just a little bit, because it's like, look, I understand you're entitled to your opinion, you're allowed to feel this way, but you lived in Arizona, but then you're saying, oh, now I moved to Tennessee in this particular instance, and oh, we have this here, and it's like, all these things exist in Arizona, it's just they might not exist in Phoenix. And sometimes they actually do, so it's just something that just kind of gets under my nerves is, you know, it's always hot, which is wrong, and, you know, people acting like the whole state is Phoenix. I understand it's the biggest metropolitan area, so I'll kind of get onto what they said and I'll put it up on the screen for you to see as well, but kind of typed a lot, so I'm kind of reading it here off my phone. Basically, the person just said, you know, it's a dry heat, they said, which is great if you're a cactus. I want to enjoy my summer, not hide from it. Summer's the season for backyard barbecues, fireflies, summer storms, and front porch hangs, not melted rear view mirrors. It made me reflect on just how many simple things we normalized since moving to Tennessee, things I didn't realize I was missing until I got here. So here's like 10 things they took for granted by living in Arizona. You know, experiencing actual seasons. So one thing that I will say that is not my favorite about southern Arizona is you do not have 4 seasons. Fall is my favorite season. However, there are areas of the state that you can drive to, like the White Mountains and Phoenix and Flagstaff and a lot of those pine forest areas, because we have a lot of pine forest that covers the state. There's a lot of mountains here. Arizona has more mountain peaks than Switzerland, and that is a verifiable fact, but you do have seasons here, just not in Phoenix, Yuma, or, you know, Tucson, obviously. Now, we can go at Mount Lemmon, which is just, you know, 45-minute drive from here, and you'll see fall foliage. You know, waving to strangers like it's second nature. Well, I don't understand that. I understand this person is probably moving to the South, and there is that, you know, oh, the South is more friendly. I just think in the big city, you just have a lot of people that are in a rush and busy and it's hot. So like that maybe homely feeling of people waving and saying hi, it doesn't just exist in the South. I've been all around the country and I've had friendly people everywhere. So when people just like this are kind of saying like, oh, there's just nobody waves to you, it's like, you could probably go to a lot of small towns in Arizona and experience that. Rain boots and snow in my closet. Okay, it does rain here. This year the monsoon has been kind of non-existent, so I will give somebody that. But the last 2 years we had rain pretty much every single day. So it does rain. And the days that it rained, the temperature did go down a lot, and we went for walks and enjoyed the storms and watched the lightning. And it was really enjoyable so for somebody to say, oh, it just, okay, yeah, you're not going to get rain all year round, but there is a designated season for rain. That, put on your rain jacket, your boots. Now, we didn't get a whole lot of rain this year, but I can get into that in a different video. And obviously, they mentioned snow. Obviously, Phoenix, Yuma, Tucson, they're not going to get snow. Tucson can get snow. It is rare, but in the higher elevations, you're going to get a lot of snow. Hence, Arizona Snow Bowl or the ski resort up on Mount Lemmon. Like, Grand Canyon, like there's places like even Sedona, Flagstaff, the eastern side, pine foresty area of Arizona, you're gonna get tons of snow. Now I understand if you're living in Phoenix, and you have to drive an hour and a half, 2 hours to get somewhere where there is snow or it is cooler, you're not gonna do that every single day. You're not gonna live it like you would be if you're just living in the certain part of Tennessee. I understand, but it's not, it just to me, I'd be like, well, don't say Arizona doesn't have that, because it does rain and it does snow. It's just not going to snow in your particular area. Farm stands with fresh eggs and homemade jam. Okay, there are farms here. They're far and few between. I did see some people have chickens at a farm. Well, not a farm, but at their house in Oro Valley. And I have seen some places out in kind of rural areas like Marana. They have some farms. And even like southeastern Arizona, there's some areas there that have like people with farms where it's like, oh, come get your farm fresh eggs. So it does exist. It's just probably not Phoenix. I'm assuming that's where this person lives. She didn't say. Taking slow country drives with the windows down. Look, I drive pizza in Oro Valley, and when the weather's nice, I lower my windows and crank my tunes. And there's a lot of rural roads over there that I just, have the windows down, have the moonroof open, I'm cranking tunes, and it's enjoyable. Now, is it going to be the same type of country as the East Coast, or Texas or Tennessee or something like that? No, but it, and I say this with like everybody is entitled to their own opinion. The only thing is when people knock Arizona and say, oh, it doesn't have this, it's like, it does, it's just, it doesn't have that, say, in Phoenix or in Tucson, or it does, it's just, it just seems nitpicky. So this is just me kind of complaining, I guess, but, backyard with grass, understand. But to me, in my opinion, a backyard with grass means you have to mow, and I hate mowing. I don't like mowing. It is not enjoyable. I'd rather have a desert backyard with AstroTurf or something to where I don't have to do that. Feeling like you're part of a real village, well, you could say if you lived in New York City, you're not going to feel like you live in a village or a community, or Boston or Phoenix or Tucson. It's like you're going to have to move to a smaller community if you want something like that. Obviously catching fireflies, you're not going to see fireflies here, but whatever. Forgetting to lock my car and it's still there. So that was kind of the last thing they mentioned. So there's crime in Arizona, but there's crime anywhere. Obviously, if she moved to Memphis, she would have to watch her back pretty much all day long, or Detroit, or, parts of New York. Like, it's just, I understand that, this person, had a lot of people comment. They're like, look, you're acting like the whole state's Phoenix, or we have that here, we do have this here, like a lot of those complaints. So to me, I just get kind of annoyed because I'm like, look, there's snow here, there's rain here, there's friendly people. You can live in smaller communities to have more of that rural, smaller community feel. If you go north of here, there's a really small area called Catalina. They're much higher elevation, so they don't get the brunt of the heat. If you go farther north, there's Oracle, which is even smaller, but they're at the base of Mount Lemmon, so they're definitely going to get more snow, more rain, and cooler temperatures. But I kind of go along where like people will complain about these things, then move out of the state, and then just kind of dump on Arizona. And look, everything's up to kind of your own opinion. Like, if you like, green grass and green trees and all this other stuff, like, great, we do have that here. It's just, say, Flagstaff or, some of the eastern forested parts of the state, so it's just, I get it where most people are going to move to Phoenix or Tucson because that's where the jobs are at, and Flagstaff, don't even get me started. Yeah, it'd be cool to live there, but it is absolutely ridiculously expensive. Like, a one-bedroom apartment's like $2,000. Don't even get me started on the housing. So obviously everyone's not going to move there, but just to kind of act like Arizona doesn't have any of these things. It has none of these things, and that's not the only reel that I've seen it in. I've seen it in a lot of them to where I'm going, guys, look, it is here. It's not going to be the same. Or, you know, you're obviously living in a major metropolitan area like Phoenix, and it's in the Sonoran Desert. You know, there's high desert areas like Monument Valley that are around 5,000 plus feet, to where it's much more pleasant, especially in the shoulder seasons in winter. They do get snow. Flagstaff gets snow. Sedona gets snow. You know, a lot of Mount Lemmon here gets snow. All the mountain ranges are going to have snow on them. In fact, south of here, Sahuarita, usually in the winter, it's covered in snow. So, you know, it's just one of those things that people say about Arizona that just kind of irritate me. Or, you know, oh, you gotta check for critters all the time. You know, they're attacking your house. And it's like, look, if you live in Phoenix, you're pretty much not gonna see scorpions, spiders, snakes. Like, in the major urban dense areas, they've all been kind of routed out. You know, if you're gonna run into a lot of those things, it's gonna be more the rural areas. Tucson is very wild. There's a lot of wildlife running around here, and even me, I haven't seen a whole lot, but if you go out on the nature trails and such, you know, you're probably gonna run into some wildlife and those kinds of things. But Arizona has a lot of great things to offer. It does take a particular person to live here, because there's a lot of people that probably move in thinking, it's a dry heat, I'll deal with it. And it is brutal. I will give people that. It is brutal. The summer lasts a long time. If you live in Phoenix or Tucson, Yuma, like, you're not going to get fall. You're not going to get these snow, winter kind of things like you would elsewhere. But, you know, pick your poison. You know, one of my coworkers lived in Chicago for mostly his whole life, and he's just absolutely done with the freezing cold temperatures in the winter and would rather just put up with the heat to have pretty much November through May be perfect. So, yeah, it's just something that gets on my nerves. I just wanted to get other people's opinions out there. If you live in Arizona, what are your thoughts about these kinds of things? If you live outside of Arizona or have moved outside of Arizona, what's your thoughts? And if you're looking to move to Arizona, what's your thoughts as well? So, appreciate you guys tuning in. Just a short little video. It's kind of warm out today. It is 102 in September, so, you know, that's just the way it is. But I'll catch you next time on the next video. We're heading to Monument Valley early October, so I'm going to make more videos about that because it's one of my favorite places. So catch you next time on Travels with Travis. I'm alive in Tucson, of course. We'll see you later.